Welcome. We'll be talking about universities. We'll be talking about specifically the kind of planning and management that is required. Of course, it is required for every little thing that we do in life. But when we talk about universities, the way we plan, how to make all that knowledge, all that available to the students, then that requires planning and management on a very, very large scale and in a very detailed manner. So that's one of the most important aspects of any university, and we'll be talking to Professor Ramanujam, who is with the Division of Stride in IGNOU, and he will be telling us in greater detail about the kind of planning and management that is required, especially in distance education. Welcome, Professor Ramanujam. It's a pleasure interacting with you over all these issues that confront us. Actually, it's not something that's that we get tied over with very easily, because I think every little bit requires detailed planning and systematic implementation. So let us start off with the kind of issues that are involved here when we talk about planning and management.
Planning and management for the universities, which we know, you call them conventional universities.
You mean where you have classroom
campus-based universities,
yes.
Face-to-face setting, that has been going on for centuries. I think even if you start from the oldest among the modern universities, Bologna or Morocco, at least for 1,000 years, you have the experience of planning and management.
I'm sure they must have planned at Nalanda as well.
That belongs to the ancient period, maybe medieval period.
But they must have planned something.
Oh yes, tremendous planning. Without that you can't have Nalanda or Takshashila actually, or Vikramasila, or even the universities that existed in other parts of India which don't even get mentioned, like Mathur Tamil Sangam or Kanjipuram. These were all centers of great learning.
Yes.
And I'm sure there must be hundreds of centers of great learning, must have been earlier, but we don't have, unfortunately, the detailed records of information. Now, that kind of planning and management evolved over a period of centuries, and they know how to plan their resources and use them to achieve their stated objectives. When it comes to the open universities, I think it is rather a recent phenomenon. Even if we, the first open university, of course, was UNISA, University of South Africa, started in 1962, but it was not that open when it came to the curriculum and other practices, and therefore we always start with the second open university, that is the British Open University, which was started in 1969. And when this university was started, there was a planning committee, as we have a planning board in IGNOU. The planning committee took more or less 3 years to plan before they announced their first programs or first courses. So they looked into various aspects of the physical resources and human resources, intellectual resources, in order to achieve the objectives stated by the charter of the Open University. And the equivalence of that charter is our Act, whether it is IGNOU Act or the Act of any state open university. The Act states your overall objective, and you have to achieve that. How well you can plan your physical resources and other resources, human resources, that is the real challenge, because the Open University did not have a previous experience. You have to plan for students whom you did not know and you may not meet for the major part of the teaching learning experience.
And you also did not know what the students wanted.
Exactly, what they wanted. So everything will have to be referred to your charter, your act. So that is the first act. And then when it comes to planning resources, from where the resources come. In the case of IGNOU and maybe in all other public funded state open universities, initially at least the money comes from the government. And then gradually they withdraw and you have to be on your own, self-supporting, self-financing, by whatever name you call. And I am sure, I am very clear about IGNOU. Right now I think we are getting no money from the government for the recurring expenditure, for the non-planned. We are getting something for the planned activities. So from where the money comes from the students. Now how to make use of these financial resources to have the kind of physical resources that your open university must have at the headquarters, at the regional centers, at the study centers.
You mean libraries and things like that?
Everything. Libraries, your offices, studios, and all other physical resources in the form of buildings, equipment, and all that. Libraries, laboratories.
Printing division,
yes.
all that.
Then you have to plan for the intellectual resources in the form of teachers, then support staff, support services. Now, this is not easy. For example, if you look at the staffing pattern of the open universities, IGNOU has a particular pattern. State open universities have some other, and among the state open universities, each one differs. Of all the open universities that I know of, IGNOU has probably the largest number of permanent teachers, followed by maybe Hyderabad Ambedkar Open University and Nasik Open University.
So do other universities go on a contract basis?
Well, their staffing pattern is such that they don't have huge faculties for each discipline.
So they outsource?
They outsource.
Okay.
And we have that formula, 1:2:4 initially. I don't know how it is implemented right now because I don't have the data. 1 professor, 2 readers, and 4 lecturers per discipline. So that was a rule of thumb. Now, why we went for that kind of rule of thumb? Because at that time there was no experience. You plan something and the program runs for say 10 years. After that, if you cannot continue with that program, then you have to bring in a new program. And then you also have the indispensable duty to revise the programs. At that time, we thought every 5 years you have to revise the program. But with the availability of technology and so many other facilities, I personally would feel for every academic session, there has to be a revision.
But is that feasible?
Yes, it is very much feasible because all your material should be available in the soft copy form. Now, if you want to update a little bit, maybe 1%, how much time will it take? And if you want to go for a major revision, still 3 years, 5 years may be a reasonable duration. But then updating of the materials should be an ongoing process. Now, when you look at these activities, then you have to plan the staffing pattern. Now, what are the duties of the permanent staff, permanent faculty, support staff? They have to be identified and accordingly you have to plan how many positions at the professors level, lecturers level, now assistant professors, associate professors and so on. But then how to calculate the workload, what are their duties, essential duties, what about their own development, staff development, how much time they would require for their own research and other activities. So it has to be holistic because the setting is different, but if you are a professor or assistant professor, you are not getting something very different from what a conventional campus-based university teacher gets. and how much workload is there, what is your workload. These things will have to be worked out very carefully, and that is the job of the planning. Then staffing will be more rational. Otherwise, what will happen? I can see two possibilities. You have 10 people or say 7 people in a discipline.
Department.
And if you don't work out the details carefully and make it mandatory, what is minimum? Maximum one need not say. What is the minimum output that should come from a teacher, from a support staff, from an administrator? Then things will go
Smoothly.
very, out of hand. In a place where you have 7 people, maybe 2 may be working. The other may be pretending to be working. But in a situation like ours, when you give credits, say credit page, everybody's name will be there. How to quantify? It's a very important distinction, because in a classroom, you are the only teacher. And your teaching will be assessed by your students. Number of classrooms are allotted. But here, how many units a particular teacher must write? How many courses should be revised in a period of 5 years? And what should be the deployment of the existing staff? If you are short of staff, then how much you can outsource? And who are the outside course writers? What is the kind of quality of content that you get from them? And how much of your own time will have to be
Editing it.
spent editing and shaping? So these are all little complex, and you cannot really be very accurate. I can recall, I have edited at least 100 units from different programs. Now it is very easy to say editor, content editor, but actually it was rewriting. And some of the units were written by big names. Now you can't deny them the credit. You have to give the names, give the money, and at the same time you have to rewrite. So that is an enormous task for a permanent faculty. Now these things will have to be decided internally, and that will be the job of a planning unit. Initially. Later you have to have monitoring mechanism to see what really is happening. Otherwise, what will happen? There may be people who would be doing the job of 5 or 6, and there may be 5 or 6
Who are not even doing the job of one.
No, not even one. And so it will be a kind of parasitism. This parasitism will be very detrimental for an open university. That has to be kept in view when you plan your human resources. It's just an example. Similarly, the courses that an open university plans, at what level, and what kind of support the learners would need, what kind of support services, what kind of technology, what kind of components. For example, you take our EMPC, how many audios, how many videos. We have a rule of thumb, I should say, that for a 3 credit or 4 credit course, you must have at least 1 video and 2 audios. That is little outdated concept, but then what is happening right now? Are we following that one? Then technology management policy. If you had a particular technology in the 80s, mid 80s, in the 21st century, in 2013, when technology has developed so much, how to switch over smoothly from that area to the new and the most advanced one, and then how to, along with getting sophisticated technology, how to train the staff who are handling the technology. Otherwise it will be very difficult.
Absolutely.
I mean, we were talking about not using even 50% of the potential of certain equipments when we were talking over a cup of tea. Now, how it happens? It happens because there's no planning.
And there's been no training.
For technology management, changing from one domain to another domain, and then training staff continuously. If these things are not happening, whether at the teaching level or at the technology level or at the support level, then the university's activities would suffer to that extent. and then we would not be delivering the quality products to the students. And if the students don't get quality products, then their learning would get affected adversely. So all this will have to be kept in view. And then how many schools you should have, how many other technical units you should have, support units like divisions and all, and where they will be located, how they should be staffed. Now overall, how to account for so many persons. See, you can have 10 persons and you can outsource, involve 10,000 people, as we are doing in the case of course writers. I think we have 10,000, 15,000 course writers. But at the same time, we also have large number of permanent faculty. Now, I do not have any kind of data. If each permanent faculty also will have to write X number of units, then what would be the scenario? And then evaluating assignments. As I understand, in most of the universities, open universities, they do not evaluate assignments because of the workload. Maybe real, maybe perceived. But this has to be worked out. This is the job of planning at different levels. Now you can't expect the planning committee to do everything. We have to do planning at the micro level, at the unit level, at the school level, at the discipline level. If that is not there, then things go in an unplanned manner. And your intellectual resources, your financial resources and physical resources may be either underused or misused or may not be used at all. You may have buildings without any activities. You may have equipment with no use, and you may have faculty, support staff with little work. Now, this is a very dangerous possibility if the planning is not proper.
Right.
Now, that takes us to the management domain.
That was my next question.
Yeah.
You just said that ideally we should be revising or updating our courses during every session. Now, when we plan our courses, what happens is that one has to go through a process. You have to first put in a proposal, and then whether it's for revision or not, and then it goes to the discipline where it's discussed, and then it goes to the school board, and then it goes to the academic council, and there's this process that's in place.
Yes.
So how do we manage that part of it?
I think it all depends on the initial planning. Let me start with the recruitment. When we recruit or appoint teachers, what do we expect from the teachers? And when we appoint support staff, what do we expect from them? Do we have a clear idea about their work? If we have a clear idea, then we would state very clearly in the appointment letter, this is what we expect from you.
No, that is fine. If I am willing to do it,
Okay.
and I actually initiate that process,
Okay.
but the various steps would take so long that I don't think it is practically feasible to expect that I would be able to do this every session, because it takes so long for every little step to be covered.
That depends on your planning. If you are a course coordinator or a program coordinator, first you assess the availability of the resources, whether you have the budget, whether you have the course writers, whether you yourself can handle some part of the course writing, whether you can depend on other colleagues from your own discipline. You make sure that this is what I am going to get. Then accordingly you plan your schedule. What you can do in 6 months, if you want to do in 2 months, then you will find it extremely difficult. At the same time, if all the things are given to you and whatever you ask for, you would be in a position to get it. And a 6 months job, if it cannot be done in 2 years, then what happens? That's where monitoring comes in. The management will have to be alert and alive. Now, it may happen at the level of the discipline, it may happen at the level of the school, the director or the academic council, board of management, the vice chancellor. Everybody will have to be concerned about it. If that kind of planning and management is not there, then things will go haywire.
Naturally.
And one can take credit of having done something to satisfy one's own soul or conscience. But that cannot be the yardstick for managing institutions, because we have invested, we have recruited people, and we have initiated activities. Take, for example, even the admission of students. If a particular course got, say, 10,000 students or 5,000 students at the master's level, suddenly there is a drop and you get only 200, 300. What's happening? I think we have to see, review why it is happening. And then you have to take a decision. And now this information has to be given to the management to take a managerial decision.
Right.
And it may go to the school board, go to the academic council, to the board of management, but then the process should operate. Suppose I have a program and the program doesn't get anybody for a number of years, and if I am keeping quiet and if the management is also unaware, then what happens? Whose loss? It's a huge social loss, institutional loss.
Financial losses.
Financial
right?
loss,
To the
societal loss.
institution, yes.
Societal loss.
Yes.
So that is where planning and management are interrelated. If you plan to have a program for X, and within the 10 years, you want to produce X number of graduates with that kind of quality, standard. If it is not happening, then there is something basically wrong with the planning process and with the managerial mechanism, monitoring mechanism and management policy. If you have planning in place and management is alive and active, it will not happen. There will be interventions at the appropriate times.
The monitoring.
At levels. Yes, you will be, I think the red light will burn. You will be told, you are going wrong. Please wake up. Do something. Your course has not been, your program has not been revised for 20 years, 22 years. What is happening? Is there a mechanism like that? I think Indian universities are very, very
Lax about
relaxed.
it, yes.
They are relaxed. Let me use a very, comfortable word. They are relaxing. And that this cannot happen in a British Open University. The British Open University will see that things go according to the plan. And there may be failures. You plan and yet fail. Doesn't matter. But be frank about it. Be honest about it. They failed miserably when they launched that e-university, investing so many millions of pounds. And within 3-4 years, they found it was unviable, it was unproductive, and therefore they took a decision to wind it up, close it. And they took a decision to open university in the US. It also miserably failed, and then they withdrew it after a review. And they also discovered that in a place like US, you don't need an open university because every institution was practicing the open university concept in some way or other.
So wouldn't you say that is a failure of planning? Because before opening a university there, wouldn't you expect someone to go and actually do a review of the situation, do a survey?
Yeah, they do that. They do that.
So how is it that they missed that part of it?
Sometimes, see, you can't guarantee 100%. It's you plan to launch a rocket. You take every care. Somewhere something goes wrong and it flaps. And in these also, there may be some very, very influential individuals who might have got a bright idea, a brainwave. They might have thought that it would work. And they might have convinced the providers of money, whether the government or other sources. And they might have thought sincerely that it would work. But if it doesn't work, it doesn't lead to any kind of a dismissal or a punishment. And billions of dollars of money is invested in US universities, in European universities to conduct research projects. Many of them fail. They don't yield results, but that for that matter they won't ask for results immediately within 3 years or 3 months. But that is a different thing. Research is always a long-term process. That takes me to your basic question, how to plan research. Research is indispensable, systemic research, because we talk about at least 2 types of research, discipline-based research, systemic research. You specialize in your own English literature or education or computer science relevant to your discipline. That is discipline-based research. But how to teach your subject through distance mode, through online or through any other arrangement, that is systemic research. Now, systemic research, unfortunately, is the weakest in all the developing countries. And because the systemic research is very weak, then it doesn't contribute to the improvement of the system.
So you mean we don't really plan how we are going to take the knowledge, our resources to the learner? Is that what you're implying?
Yes, yes. We do plan, but at the macro level. But then when it comes to micro level planning, we just relax. We don't want to. Suppose I take up a particular project, and then if it doesn't go properly, immediately there has to be a mechanism which will ask me to give the feedback, and the feedback should alert the top level management, and then you have to wake up. If it is found unviable, just give it up. Start a new thing. If you have programs with less than 10 for 10 years, what is the fun? And if your original plan was to have at least 1000 students, and if you plan a program which will have only 10 students per session, nothing wrong in that. Because when we talk about planning, we should also see the difference between demand-based and need-based. There are need-based programs where you don't look for numbers. It can be very sophisticated research may have just 2 or 3 researchers, and it is worth investing a lot. And you can't have that kind of democratic approach in distributing resources, financial resources. If you want to encourage high quality research, then you have to provide that kind of environment where small things will not matter, and the researcher will have to concentrate more on his research rather than asking for a pin or a pen or a paper or a glass. These things should not be the everyday concerns. But then when you invest, then it is also the responsibility of the planning unit and also the management system to see what is happening to our investment. There's no fun in admitting, say, millions of students and then not providing their learning materials in time, not conducting counseling sessions in time, not returning their assignments in time. Then we will be failing at the very fundamental level, because the 4 things are cannot be compromised. After admission, send the materials in time, send the assignments in time, and return the assignments, corrected assignments in time, conduct counseling in time, conduct examinations and declare results in time. These are, non-negotiable. Other types of support you can add. But if these things are not happening, then I would say there is no planning, there is no monitoring, and there is no management. That will be a very sad situation.
Well, the American poet Robert Frost said that we have 2 eyes which make one sight. Well, I think that any vision of a university is brought about through these 2 eyes of the university, I'd like to call it. One is planning and one is management. It is both of them together that make up the entire vision of the university. So thank you very much, Professor Ramanujam, for talking about it in such detail. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I like that analogy. The 2 eyes, planning and management as 2 eyes with one vision.
Right.
That vision, I think, will be guided by the soul, the commitment. If we have the commitment, I think both the eyes would be performing what they are expected to perform. Thank you.
Thank you.